Hey everybody, welcome back. It's episode 4 of How's That Day, a culture rundown with Tom and Phil. And I'm going to start this podcast out the exact same way I've started out the last 1, 2, 3 of them with the one question. Tom, how's that day?
My favorite part of the day so far was hearing that introduction because it was the old school Phil that I love to hear so much. You're gonna shake, you're gonna move. Oh fuck!
I put a little sauce on it. Put a little
you did. It was a little saucy.
Little sex in there in my voice, just
That's like old school 21-year-old Phil strutting down New York City full of confidence. I loved it. Made me happy.
Tom, I need to know, how's that day? How is it?
Day's good. It's Wednesday. Had today off. I was just telling Phil off mic. I woke up at 8 a.m. in a fright, thinking I was late for work, and realized I didn't have to go to work. So I went back to bed till 11.
I forgot my equipment for recording this back at my office, and had to drive back there earlier this evening. And on my way to the drive there, I had a weird brain fart moment where I thought I was driving to work in the morning. I was like, oh man, it's weird that I'm driving to work in these clothes. I wonder if they're going to be okay with what I'm wearing. And then I was like, oh wait, no, it's 5 p.m. No one's going to be there. So
That's also a good feeling.
Yeah, that was a good feeling too. But it was just a weird, you just get in that mode of the only reason I take that route is to go to work. So I just had this weird not deja vu, but just dumb moment where I forgot where I was.
Yeah, I had a similar thing I had to work on Sunday, which is unusual for the job I do. And I was driving in, and I used to stop to get a coffee, but in LA, it's just so hard to park during rush hour and run in and get out. So I always prep my coffee the night before, cold brew machine or pick one up or something. But I forgot on Sunday, and I was driving in, and there's a Starbucks drive-thru, and I was like, screw it, I'll get it. And it's normally so packed, and there was no line. There was nobody there but me. And I was like, holy shit, this drive is all right. It's Sunday morning. Nobody's on the road.
Yeah, that'll happen. I always want Chick-fil-A on Sundays, and they're closed.
Not only that, but I was driving, got the coffee, no traffic anywhere in the back roads and stuff. And then I kept refreshing my podcast app because I listened to the Comedy Bang Bang podcast Monday morning, I started on my drive to work. And I was so mad that it wasn't refreshing. I'm like, did they forget to put an episode up? Nope, it's Sunday. I'm just dumb today. And then I was dumb the rest of the day. It was pretty great.
Well, it's good that we've both been dumb this week, I guess.
Yeah, it's a dumb week. Yeah. How's your day, Phil?
My day's good. It's been pretty average. Just went to work, came home, worked on a few things today. Nothing serious. Made some boring adult errands involving dentist appointments and such. So not typically a very exciting day or anything like that. But good day nonetheless. Ate some dinner a little while ago. Watched some Simpsons.
I did I had a lot of medical phone calls today as well. I had to reroute my new primary care physician because I got new health insurance this year, and all my meds for my asthma and stuff are all out of whack. So I was on the phone for 45 minutes today. But that's not who cares about our health? That shit's lame. You mentioned you watched The Simpsons, so I gotta ask, did you watch the latest episode about the Apu controversy?
No, man, no. I don't watch new episodes. I'm watching old school episodes.
Have you heard about that?
I've heard about it, but I guess I don't. Who's watching The Simpsons anymore? I'm surprised anybody was watching that episode to know that happened.
Yeah, well, I didn't watch it, but I saw the blowback about it. So basically, for those who don't know, there was this documentary that came out, I think, a couple of years ago called either The Problem with Apu or The Trouble with Apu.
Yeah, one of those I was flanking.
Yeah, the filmmaker, I guess, just interviewed a bunch of men who are actors and voiceover actors, people in the entertainment industry, who have just had to deal with kind of the backlash of the Apu stereotype from The Simpsons. And The Simpsons finally addressed it on air, apparently, this week, which led to Lisa Simpson, of all characters, basically saying, oh, just deal with it. Why are we so politically correct? Which seems like something Homer or Bart should say. I don't know why Lisa's saying that. That almost feels like a betrayal to me. But again, I haven't watched the episode, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lisa's the liberal, progressive. She's always the smartest, most like caring person on the show, so that's why it would be a betrayal. But
Not like, do you remember that Malibu Stacy episode
yeah, of course.
during their classic run? I mean, that's Lisa Simpson, guys. Come on.
Yeah, it's a show that I don't know how many. I think it's on season 30 now, and you kind of feel like, guys, I think it's time we wrap this up because they can't possibly have anything left to say, or maybe they do, but it just feels like a show that's run its course. I don't know anyone that still watches it, but I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong, one of the greatest shows of all time, and it's important and it has a legacy, and certain runs of that show are some of the best comedy writing of all time, but. Yeah, I'd be fine with the show wrapping up. It's not really making any bold political statements like it used to in its heyday.
They are well over 600 episodes at this point.
Yeah, it just feels like it's run its course. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, there's something comforting about knowing it's around, I guess, because it was such a huge part of my childhood, but I could not tell you the last time I intentionally sat down to watch a new episode. I mean, at least a decade.
Well, I've caught some new episodes over the last few years at random, and they do generally make me laugh. I will say that about the show. And what I've been doing lately is I activated the FX Now app because I wanted to watch Atlanta. And in my search for Atlanta, I discovered they have a whole Simpsons World section where they have literally all 29 seasons of the show spaced out. So I've just been like in seasons 4 through 9, just kind of bouncing around, watching stretches of episodes at random. And it's been great lately.
Yeah, well, FXX, to really hype that new station, they did that epic front to back Simpsons marathon that lasted like several days straight. I think maybe it even went over a week straight. I mean, I would have to do the math. I'm not sure, but that was fun to tune in every now and then when I was home and just flipping channels, just knowing that The Simpsons were on at that exact moment whenever I wanted.
Well, I've said for a while that I wish that there was an app like a Netflix or a Hulu that was going to take the money to buy The Simpsons, but I didn't realize that FX had it on their app. I don't know how long it's been on there, but it's been a great find for me. So that's been the last week or two, how that's been my background, what I've been coming home and watching basically in all my free time.
There's also that website that just illegally streams Seinfeld 24/7. I actually don't know if it's still around. Maybe it got shut down. But I remember a few years ago when I was on my computer, I found the link to it. I don't know, some like chat board or something probably. And I would just have it on my computer and it just played Seinfeld uninterrupted nonstop. It was pretty fantastic.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I have Hulu and they're all on there now. So I do watch stretches of Seinfeld like that, but I just have.
This was pre-Seinfeld $1 billion Hulu acquisition, obviously.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool, though. It's like Seinfeld radio.
Hulu, yeah, exactly. Did you hear about the Spotify Hulu partnership? I think it just was announced today.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I need to dig into the details of that because I have Hulu and Spotify, but I feel like I have modified versions of both. I have like the family package for Spotify because my like $15 a month pays for 6 people or something like that. And for my Hulu, I have the advanced commercial free package. So I don't know how that jives with this new package deal.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it yet, but I just heard about that. If you're a Spotify member, you can get Hulu at an initial price of 99 cents. I mean, I don't know if that's just for like 1 month or something, but I also have both. I have Spotify Premium and I have Phil's Hulu account.
Yeah, I was going to say you have Hulu, but it's my Hulu, isn't it?
It is definitely your Hulu. And I always log on and I see all the names of your daughter and a couple of your sisters who use it.
Dude, there's like 8 people that have that account. There's so many people on the Hulu account.
I'm always tempted to create my own name, like Tom the Mooch or something, but I just go on yours and probably mess up your algorithms.
I don't care about their algorithms at all. Our like family Netflix and the family, like what basically the trade-off is in the family is that my mom has Netflix and pays for that and everyone kind of hogs that. So our algorithm on Netflix is all screwy. I pay for the Hulu and everyone kind of shares that.
Phil and I used to have a deal where I used his Hulu and he used my HBO Go. But then I guess you got this rich family friend And now you don't use my HBO, and I have not stopped using your Hulu. And thank you for that. That's how I watch Battlestar Galactica.
That's all right. I don't mind as long as if it were affecting me, then I would put an end to it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I would just cut you out of my life.
All right. Well, all right. You ready to dive in for a movie review?
Let's do a movie review.
All right. This week, Tom and I will be discussing the God himself, Steven Spielberg's new film, Ready Player One.
Wait. The God himself. That was great. I love it.
He's like a film god.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. That explains a lot about us. Continue.
All right. Well, put a dance.
I'm sorry. Did I just hurt your
feelings? You popped my
something?
balloon.
I'm sorry, man. No, it's great. The God himself.
All right.
All bow down.
My name's Wade Watts. My dad picked that name because it sounded like a superhero's alter ego, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. But he died when I was a kid. My mom, too. And I ended up here. Sitting here in my tiny corner of nowhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the Oasis.
Let's start with Ready Player One. It is Steven Spielberg's God knows how many. I didn't count. You know how many movies he's directed? Probably in the 30s or so. That's my guess.
Well, this actually speaks to another episode idea we want to do, because Phil and I basically originated film bracket stuff, which film Twitter is all over now. And I remember there was a Spielberg one prior to the release of this movie, and I think he's right at 32. This may be 33 when you count up all of his features.
Cool. All right, so here's the IMDb synopsis. When the creator of a virtual reality world called the Oasis dies, he releases a video in which he challenges all Oasis users to find his Easter egg, which will give the finder his fortune. Thomas James Bond, what did you think of Ready Player One?
Okay, a little background. I read the Ernest Cline novel that the movie's based on.
I have not.
3-ish years ago. Based off a friend's recommendation, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked all the references. And even in the movie, the thing I'm really kind of ignorant on is all of the game references. Like, I picked up a couple of the bigger names, I guess, but I think there are a lot of details, both in the book and movie, that just kind of went over my head. But in terms of the story, I thought I was a fan of the book. I thought it was really sincere and heartfelt. I know it's gotten a lot of shit over the years for kind of just using all of these real world references to tell its story, but I don't know. I thought it was unique, and its heart was in the right place. So I was excited for this movie because of that, and because of my love for Spielberg. The trailer didn't do a ton for me, except for, again, some of the references, but I thought it would be a fun popcorn film. And just to wrap up that, I guess my ultimate opinion is that it is super cheesy, kind of forgettable, and pretty fun.
Interesting. Okay. I walked out feeling maybe a little bit more in your department. Like, I probably felt like, okay, that was fine. That was okay. But I think maybe I remember the drive home. I got in the car and I started thinking about all of it. I didn't have any music on. It was just me and my thoughts. I was driving home, and I started thinking about how scenes were, and I just really, really started to be like, oh, well, that didn't work, but that's okay because it was fun. And then I was like, oh, well, that didn't work either, but it was fun. And then that didn't work either. That was really stupid. But the movie was kind of, and I just kind of kept being like that for a while, until eventually, after like a day or two, I realized I don't think I liked the movie very much. I really don't know how much of it works at all. I will say that there are several sequences throughout that I will highlight, and I'm sure we'll talk about, that are grandiose and stylish and really cool and interesting and well directed. Like, Steven Spielberg is such a good director that even his bad movies or his mediocre level movies have sequences that are incredible in it, because he's such a good director at staging, at pacing, at staging an action sequence that's fantastic. So even a movie that I'm not crazy about, there's probably one or two sequences in it that are probably pretty awesome because he's just that good of a director. So that's kind of how I left feeling the movie was like, there's one or two sequences that I'll admit are pretty awesome and pretty good, but the rest of the movie I think is very flawed. And the script, I mostly I would blame the script and what I would call a lack of ambition with what the story is about. So, yeah, that's where I stand on the movie, or at least my first experience of watching through it. Interesting, but a failure.
What's your favorite extended set piece of The Terminal?
Yeah, well, The Terminal, I sent my friend my bottom 5 Spielbergs not that long ago. So I could pull them up for you if you'd like.
I would love for you to do that if you need a minute.
No, I found it. I actually have already pulled it up since saying that. That's all. All right.
Let's do it.
I was quick draw McGraw on that one. All right, number 1. You should know what this one is.
Wait, is this your least favorite?
This is my bottom Spielberg. This is my bottom.
But is number 1 like your absolute least favorite, or is it your 5th least?
All right, yeah, my number 1 is my absolute least favorite. So I'll
okay.
Right.
So start with number 5.
All right, number 5, Lost World. It doesn't work as a movie. Like,
I agree with you. It has a couple nice pieces, like you were just
couple
saying.
Nice pieces. There's a couple cool sequences, but I think in retrospect, basically every sequel to Jurassic Park is an absolute failure in my eyes. Like they all kind of suck.
Lost World, I loved when I was 12. I rewatched it 2 years ago, and I agree, it does not hold up.
Number 4, Amistad.
Interesting.
Amistad is low for me. I think because I think it is in some ways representative of the worst of Spielberg in terms of his serious films. Like, I really love a lot of the serious stuff that he's done, but I think it's one of those, let's take a story about a slave uprising and make it the star of it Matthew McConaughey. Like, I think a lot of it is just hasn't aged well. I never thought it was a particularly compelling movie. It's not something I ever care to revisit. I mean, there's probably something like Always or something like that other people don't like more. But Amistad was one that I remember as a young kid being like, oh, I didn't like that one. And I was a big fan of Spielberg already as a young kid. Number 3, I finally watched it. And man, is it uncomfortable. And that is the BFG. This movie did not work for me at all. So this is pretty high, but that's because of recency bias, I'm sure. I don't know what his plan was here. I just thought it was very uncomfortable. Number 2, The Terminal. I just have never liked The Terminal. I don't like Hanks' performance. I don't like the story. I don't like the romantic subplot. I don't like the tone of it. There's just something about The Terminal that has never worked for me. Like, oh, isn't this a cute story? I'm like, no, this is a horrifying story. And it's one of those like where I think Spielberg just kind of approached the material with the wrong attitude. And number 1 is a personal vendetta. You were there, you saw it. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is number 1. I don't know that there's a film I hate more.
That is so absurd. I'm not going to say Crystal Skull is good, but to be like your least favorite movie of all time is just the epitome of nerddom to me.
I don't care. I'll die on this hill, man. That movie, I like to quickly put it in reference for people. I was more of an Indiana Jones kid than a Star Wars kid. So when Crystal Skull was coming out, that was like the way people felt about Phantom Menace is probably the way I feel about Crystal Skull. Like it was just such this like betrayal of what I felt were the core ideals of Indiana Jones. And it felt like such a wrong-headed move. And it hurt. It hurt so bad. I've seen it 1.5 times. The halftime was on at the gym. And I remember the thing that stuck out to me the halftime I watched it was that I saved so much of it in my head. Like I can close my eyes and I remember so much of that movie because I hated it so passionately that it like saved and it like downloaded in its entirety into my brain. So I could I could just go back to it.
I have to tell this experience really quickly. So Crystal Skull came out in 2008. Phil and I we had just finished film school for a year and we were living a block away from each other in East Harlem, in Spanish Harlem. And on 86th Street, there was a movie theater. And the week or two before, I had said all throughout film school that I had, like, my biggest blind spot were the Indiana Jones films. You remember this?
Of course, yeah.
So when Crystal Skull was about to come out, I finally sat down. I'm like, Phil, you and I, let's watch them together. So for there was like a week there leading up to the release where Phil came over.
Yeah, like sometime within like 5 days, we watched the first
pretty
three.
much like 3 or 4 nights in a row. Phil came over and we watched the first 3 films, and then I think we watched Raiders a second time.
We did. We watched Raiders the night we were going to like a midnight or a late night of Crystal Skull, and we watched Raiders again right before we went.
Right. Yes, to get ourselves pumped up. So that was a really fun experience. So I was all hyped. I love those movies, especially the dummy drop in Temple of Doom out of the
You
helicopter.
lost your mind. I'll never forget. You lost your mind for that stunt.
Yeah, I think I rewound it a couple times, like even though I had never seen the movie before. But that was one of my favorite moments in cinema history. So we go to see Crystal Skull on 86th Street. It's me, Phil, and Phil's old Ohio buddy Jake, who they were roommates at the time. And we're all watching it. And I mean, I watched it and I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't hate the thing. I thought it was just kind of like goofy. And we leave the theater and I could just like feel the energy sitting next to Phil and Jake. They were just not pleased. So we get out onto 3rd Avenue and 86th, and it's like a 15 or 16 block walk back to where we all live. And Phil, just in his struttiest, fast-paced walk that he does, just looks at me and says, "That is not Indiana Jones," and just like books it up towards Spanish Harlem, like leaving me in the dust. And him and Jake are just like ranting, talking so fast. They're not even aware I'm there anymore. They're just so upset. And I remember just being like a block behind them, kind of following them, being like, I thought it was all right.
I had the most pitiful phone call when I got home that night. I called my buddy back home, who I knew was like a fellow Indiana Jones like nerd. Like him and I had gone to see that Raiders IMAX re-release together, and we were both big fans. And I called him and I said, "Hey man, I got bad news. I got really bad news." And he was like, "What?" Like I was like, it was like I would let him know a friend had died, but I was like, it sucks, man. He just kind of laughed. He was like, "Ha ha, that's funny, man. That's really funny. Like that's a good joke." And I was like, no, I'm dead serious.
It is not funny.
It is not funny at all. And he was just like, "Oh no." And yeah, I took it really hard. So, it's number 1 with a bullet for me, man. I hate that movie.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Anyway.
Well, I want to say, just based off the top, I don't know what my bottom 5 Spielberg would be, but you mentioned McConaughey and Amistad, which I totally forgot about. And he also had that movie Free State of Jones 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which was very similar, right? It was like a Confederate soldier leading an uprising against the South during the Civil War.
Yeah, let's make this movie. Let's make it about Matthew McConaughey, though.
He wants to be such a noble hero. I will say, I think if I have to pick off the top of my head, my least favorite of his is probably the BFG. The way you responded to Crystal Skull, like 10% of that was how I responded to BFG. That book was huge for me as a kid. That was like one of my all-time favorite stories when I was a child. So I was so excited that Spielberg and that Roald Dahl book were teaming up, and that movie is kind of hot garbage. And I think what really upsets me about that movie is it was generally well received, at least by critics.
Was it?
Which I don't know why. I'm looking. It's got a 66 Metacritic, so it's positive.
Wow.
Robbie Collin from The Telegraph gave it a 100. It's a weighty technical accomplishment, the extraordinary detailed motion capture technology alone, which stretches Rylance's human performance to giant-sized proportions, is river-straddling bounds beyond anything you've seen before. Bullshit, Robbie Collin. That CGI is some of the worst I've ever seen in a big-budget movie. It is god-awful.
All right. Well, I agree. I agree completely. I thought it was very ugly. I thought the language and just the look of it was kind of just off-putting, and it just was a boring sip where it just kind of never felt like the movie took off.
Also, thank you for not putting Hook on your bottom 5. That means a lot.
Oh my God. I don't want to go off on too big of a rant, but there's like an age gap between critics, and there's a certain like age difference where I'll see critics who are like, Hook is a really terrible movie. And I'll just be like, that's great that you think that, man, but I don't. So like I think Hook's a great movie. Like nothing you can say will convince me that Hook's a bad movie.
Amen, my man. I agree wholeheartedly. But let's stop being so negative about Spielberg. Spielberg's, as Phil said, a god.
He is.
And we'd be remiss to forget that.
I mean, he only like created the modern blockbuster, has created some of the most like influential films. He literally created the entire like pop culture genre that the film Ready Player One is referencing, basically.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get back to Ready Player One with that in mind. So, what do you're fine with all of the I guess the beats of the story? None of that really bothered you at all, or anything like that?
Oh no, not at all, not at all. So, I'm curious how you thought about the beats and especially the character stuff, having not read the book.
Okay. Well,
One thing I was really excited for. I'm a big fan of the actress Olivia Cooke, who I mentioned in an earlier episode briefly when we were both talking about our appreciation for thoroughbreds. She was also in Bates Motel. That's where I first saw her, I think. But I was super excited for that relationship between Parzival and Artemis. I think that's the heart of the book. Ultimately, that's what really makes it work beyond all the pop culture stuff and adventure moments. And in this movie, they rush it so quickly. They just completely devalue the journey of that relationship. And that, more than anything else, in terms of character issues, is what really made me realize that this shouldn't have been a movie. I don't think there's just too much going on. It's so weird and chaotic. And there are so many important character moments that happen. A needs to go to B all the way down to Z. And there's just way too much happening for one feature film. I think it was a mistake to try to just turn this into one movie.
oh yeah, I agree there. That was one thought I had during the first kind of, initial reaction to the movie, was that this is just so much story that, I'm not the guy who actually like champions that everything needs to be a TV show now. Like, I'm a movie guy. I still very much am championing like the great cinema going experience. So I don't think everything needs to be a TV show, but this certainly felt like something where it's a very rich world. And I think maybe because it feels like such a rich world, that is part of my issue with the movie, is that so much feels so unexplored by the film that I can't help but feeling very underwhelmed, because it's almost like you're given this world, this setup, these ideas where you can not only make an action-packed adventure movie, but you could still make some comments on, pop culture. You could make some comments on gaming and avatars and, the business class of people that are running these huge, massive things. We're talking on the same day that Facebook founders, Mark Zuckerberg is testifying in front of Congress, So these like massive people who are in charge of these giant ecosystems online that we're a part of, like, and it's a movie that feels ripe with all these ideas, but then it's just like, A, not going to explore any of those, and then B, kind of wrap it around a story that is ultimately very unsatisfying. I think the end of this movie is almost offensive in how they decide to wrap up the story, and it's also crammed with a love story that absolutely sucks, and also not just on a like writing level, but sucks kind of on just like on a politically correct, like old school level. It just feels like a movie for, maybe I would have liked it when I was a 13-year-old boy, but it feels like a movie for, 13-year-old boys.
The Oasis was the brainchild of James Halliday.
Hello. If you're watching this, I'm dead. I created a hidden object, an Easter egg. The first person to find the egg will inherit $500 billion and total control of the Oasis itself.
Who is this Parzival, and how the hell is he winning?
Find him.
Let's get into some spoiler territory, because you say the ending is almost offensive.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
All right. Well, spoiler, major spoiler, because I'm literally about to talk about the last like minute of the movie. So after this kid, all right. So here's the setup for the movie, by the way, which is also I find a little silly. You have this kid. The whole thing is, here's this genius billionaire who's set up this entire game for everyone to solve, and eventually, as you make your way through it, you realize that the way he wants you to solve it, or the only way you can solve it, is that you have to like freakishly study the details of his own life. Like, so the way to like become the head of this company is not through like some great skill or like proving yourself to be like some honorable person. It's more for like your knowledge, or your deep dive knowledge into this man's very, very personal, like emotional history. So it's not like really so he's kind of leaving it in the hands of his entire company and this entire ecosystem in the hands of whoever just knows his diary the best. So that's a little strange to me. But anyway, so you finally get to the end, and here's this character who is, grown up in the stacks, which is like the poor part of town, and his friends are part of this quote unquote rebellion, and they're going to change everything. And so when they finally get to the end and save the day and take over the corporation, all they decide to do is take Tuesdays and Thursdays off. And, tell people to go outside a little bit more. Like, there's nothing about like, oh, we changed the stacks. We made sure everyone, whatever. We like changed the way that, people interacted with this software. We changed this. We made the world a better place, or we dissolved it all because we wanted everyone to go offline. Like, nothing. It's like, oh, like now I'm rich and I'm in charge of everything, and I'm just going to keep everything status quo, except for like, we're going to take a couple days off now. Like, it's just like, I don't know. For me, it just did not work at all.
That's actually interesting, really interesting to me, because I see your point, but I don't know if that's what the movie was about.
Yeah, like, this is very much a case. And we can talk about this. This is very much a case of me wanting the movie to be a different movie. Like, right. I want to be very clear about this. The movie that Steven Spielberg apparently introduced this movie in front of South by Southwest audiences and introduced it by saying, this is not a film, this is a movie. Like, which I think is a bit ridiculous.
Yes.
It's a bit, especially coming from someone like him who has spent his entire career proving that you can make smart blockbusters. That making a quote-unquote film and a quote-unquote movie are not mutually exclusive, that you can have smart genre adult popcorn movies, and I'm not quite sure why he seems to have taken this defensive stance about like, hey, this movie's stupid and it shouldn't matter because it wants to be stupid. And I guess I was kind of watching it like, man, I really wish I would have gotten the smarter, more subversive movie version of this story.
Yeah, I hear you, but I also, that's obviously not what the movie is. I don't think that's what the book is either. And what's really fascinating, though? I have my own criticisms about the way the movie wraps up, but for different reasons. So it's actually kind of fitting that you called Spielberg a god, because what they have to do in this story to win the adventure is they have to treat this creator like a deity, like he's this godlike person that people obsess over and worship, and they're in awe of when he appears. And he even has basically resurrected himself after death, where inside the oasis, he can converse with people in real time, as if he was still around, It's very, like, religious worship, the way people react to what goes on inside the oasis, which is a pure fantasy. So I like the message of, take Tuesdays and Thursdays off, live your life. We were never trying to fix the world. But I think the movie is maybe not as self-aware as it wants to say it is at the end about the problematic nature of, like, pure fanboy worship and engrossing yourselves entirely in the lives of other people's creations instead of doing something yourself, Like the Star Wars adults who just lose their fucking minds over every new thing that happens in that universe as if they own it. And like the fans own things that artists make to a point, but you also have to lead your own life. And I think the movie was trying to get there at the end, but it just doesn't. I think it just acts like it did at the end of the movie, but it really didn't,
Yeah, I guess my biggest issue with it is I feel like had it taken more chances in terms of the story and what it was going to do, I think it would have had more stakes. I think this movie has a real stake problem. And this is an issue I have with a lot of virtual reality set movies or robot-driven stories, especially, is I have kind of an empathy problem in those stories. And so a movie like this, I think he did a very poor job, and this is where I think like having a miniseries would be great in terms of setting up the entire world, because I didn't quite understand the stakes or what was at stake for getting this company. Because like the way the movie kind of positions it is, or in the early days, it's just, well, I want to, live a better life, so I want to, win this contest, which is cool. But, you know, like, it's not until later in the movie when they kill his aunt and uncle or whoever that guy, her aunt and her boyfriend, you know, where he, like, feels like he has some personal stake. But that scene, I thought, was almost laughable because he mourns her for, I think, no scene at all. I don't think there's a single moment
Yes.
where he's
Yes.
upset about it. And, yeah, it's just not something the movie takes seriously. And I don't, like, I thought the stacks were a cool idea, but I don't understand, like, what makes this lead character exceptional. Like, because as far as I can understand, like, he is, the only thing exceptional about him is that the movie has told us that he is the main character. Because otherwise, I just thought the main guy, just Ty Sheridan is the actor's name. The character's name is a very comic booky Wade Watts. And, you know, I just thought Wade was kind of a nobody, and I don't know, like, a lot of the movie just didn't really stand out to me in ways that I think a movie like this could.
Well, he is a nobody, but what separates him is really the attention to detail that he puts into the world and to the creator, like the worship that he puts into him. He mentions how he's the only, the creator of the Oasis made this personal library of everything that mattered to him that you can go visit. And when he first died and the Easter egg hunt was on, you know, that place was overflowing with people doing research. And then as time went on and no one could find the first clue, it died off. But he was the one who stayed. Like, he persisted, he kept trying. And that's what separates him. But that's not really cinematic or endearing. It's kind of just sad.
Well, I mean, like, all right, so, like, I guess, like, people's life within the games I found to be sort of unsatisfactory in terms of, like, the way they explain the world. Like, I haven't read the book, but one thing I know about the book that people have told me is that in the book, like, everyone does everything in their life in the Oasis. Like, kids go to school in the Oasis. They, like, you know, like, they spend literally all their time. They work their jobs in the Oasis. Like, that is where you spend your entire life. And I wish the movie had done a little bit more of that. I think just a little bit more establishing that would kind of give you a sense of just how much the world is reliant on this software and how much the world... I wish he would have made the world of the stacks seem a bit more run down or seem a bit worse off, where, like, there was no life outside of this software. You know, like, outside of, like...
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. First off, the place is a dump. Second off, I don't know how
stacks
they
look like a
accomplished
dump,
that.
but I mean, like, I don't...
Yeah, and that opening shot of him climbing down to get onto the ground level, you pass by everybody who's plugged into the Oasis and their little trailer things. Like, everybody is hooked up to it.
Yeah, but I guess...
There's, like, one... I think it's just his aunt or somebody who's, like, cooking sausages, but pretty much everyone is logged in, and the only real world stuff you kind of see is towards the end when the real world stakes have been implicated. He's on the run with his group, and the most real world stuff you see by far is from the main villain, who clearly doesn't give a shit about the Oasis. He just wants the power that it would bring, you know. And I don't think you're wrong necessarily, but again, I think it's just a problem of the only way they solve that is with even more exposition, which there's already a ton of, or maybe try to make it a trilogy or a mini series for HBO or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I guess, like, I just felt like when I was going back to what I was saying about stakes, like, if they made it clear that, like, when you died in the Oasis, they say when you die in the Oasis, you know, you have to start over. And I guess they tried to do that with his girlfriend or his aunt's boyfriend. Like, I guess they tried to do it with him in terms of, like, you know, how you can get addicted and lose a lot of your possessions and stuff. But
yeah,
I wish they would have made it more clear that, like, how much was at risk if you died. Like, I didn't feel like anybody was ever truly at risk in there, because it was their, like, avatars that were, you know, kind of going along. And I have the same problem with Westworld. I can't remember if you'd watched season 1 of Westworld, but
I have.
All right, well, like, Westworld is about a lot of the main characters are robots, and their days are, like, very repetitive, and they're tortured and they're beaten, and they're just kind of reprogrammed and reset, and then the next day they go through it all again. And you're supposed to sympathize with that when you're watching the show, but there's a part of me that just, like, can't do that. I'm just like, well, that's just that's a robot character, you know, like, they're just going to be reset. Like, for me, the stakes are very low when something bad is happening to them. Like, I don't get as invested because I'm like, well, you know, that cut is just going to be repaired the next day. So it's not as brutal for me to watch it. And I had the same kind of issue here, making that leap with some of the stakes, especially towards the end.
I don't really agree with what you're saying about Westworld, but I do with Ready Player One. I think you're right. The final battle where all the Sixers, the underlings who work for the bad guy, are just going into battle and trying to, preserve this force field thing or whatever that T.J. Miller, that psycho, has found, and they keep dying, and another guy just hops in a seat. Like, that's when you die, your seat goes red, and in the real world, the guy just is like, oh shit, I died. He just stands up and another guy takes his place. It really does kill a lot of the tension. But is there anything you liked? Can we get a little positive?
Yeah, I'll get some positive. I was going to say, a lot of it didn't work for me. One more thing I will say negatively is, especially that I think was a big failure with the Olivia Cook stuff, is I wish Olivia Cook would have been the star of the movie, not Ty Sheridan. Olivia Cook is just such a more, or at least her character in this movie. I do like Ty Sheridan in other movies, but
yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I don't want to diss Ty Sheridan too much, but the character just for me was a wet blanket here.
Yeah.
But the Olivia Cook I wish would have been the actual star, because the Olivia Cook's, she's got real presence and she really stands out on screen, and so I really wish we would have gotten even more of her. But early in the movie, like when they're hooking up, it's that whole like, oh, you won't like me when you see me, you'll be disappointed, and then he finally sees her, and it's Olivia Cook. And it's like, okay, and sorry you're disappointed, buddy. But it's supposed to be because she has that scar or that birthmark. I mean,
not even a scar; she has a birthmark. That's supposed to be what's so horrifying.
Yeah,
that's the she's all that syndrome right there. Like, oh, I'm Rachel Lee Cook, but I'm not hot.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I did really like Olivia Cook in the movie. I wish she would have been the star. I did. Really, the third problem, or whatever you want to call it, the third key that they have to get after with the whole like battle, I thought that was the most boring part of the movie, but I did actually enjoy the race car stuff. I thought the racetrack at the beginning was awesome. I really liked the design of it, the intensity. It reminded me of the opening of Speed Racer, which I know we're both big fans of. You more so than me, but we are both big fans of. And I was really into it at that point. For me, I just thought the movie in retrospect was lacking. During the actual experience of watching it, I did actually think it was a pretty quick, easy watch. I liked a lot of I especially liked the second key. I guess we're talking spoilers, so I guess we'll just say the Shining sequence. I thought that was awesome. And that was where the movie felt the most nerdy. Like, in terms of references, not to keep harping on everything that disappointed me about the movie, but most of the references most of the references in this movie are like passing references, like it's like, oh, he literally just walked by a thing that you might like. It's not like they invest any time or give any meaning to most of these references. So I was glad when the movie stopped and kind of really invested in one of those references, and it was something that I know for a fact is very important to Spielberg with The Shining, because I know The Shining's one of his favorite films of all time. It's the movie that he met Kubrick on, because the sets, the hotel set was what it was originally, when that was being torn down, that was going to be built up for the Raiders of the Lost Ark set, the Boulder set. So Spielberg went to go look at the sets, and that's when he met Kubrick for the first time. So I know that The Shining holds a very special place in his heart. And so like that whole sequence I thought was really cool and fun, and played with the iconography of the stuff, and all that was sweet. So, and I did really like the animation. I will say that for how much of this movie is animated, I was not really taken out of it at all, but I am glad that I saw it in 2D and I didn't go to see it in like 3D or anything.
Yeah, I also saw it in 2D. I agree. The effects are really, really good. The opposite of the BFG. And I completely agree. I thought the car chase was really fun. So the challenges are completely different than they are in the book. I actually thought they did a really good job of adapting them to make them more cinematic, especially those first two. The car chase is really fun. I love me some King Kong, so that was a real cheat. And yeah, we got to talk about it a little bit, because even though I have a major problem with the goal of the second key, that whole Shining sequence was by far my favorite part of the movie. I was just overjoyed. I thought that was so, not just the references and like being in the Overlook Hotel again in a movie on the big screen, that in and of itself was kind of a thrill, but the way they set it up with Parzival's buddy Ake, who is afraid of scary movies, and they get into the Overlook and he's terrified, and he sees the two twins and tells them to run away because it's scary in here. And then he somehow manages to get his way into room 237. and just all that stuff. If you're a big fan of the movie, were such a treat. But there's a really creepy thing with Halliday's character where he's locked this woman that he loves inside this zombie-filled ballroom.
Yeah.
She's been in there for I think it's like 5+ years, right? Until someone figures out the first key and the story progresses.
It is just like a digital, projection of her. It's not really her.
Okay, I get it. You don't have empathy for
No. I'm just saying, like, no. I'm just saying,
But
like, in
still,
his defense,
that's
he didn't
terrible.
actually trap her there. That's all I'm saying.
No, but she seems to show genuine relief that someone figured it out.
No, don't
And
get me
he's
wrong. I
able
think
to-
Mark Rylance is a monster in this movie.
He's also my favorite part of the movie. I
Is
think
he?
his
I was going to
character
ask you about, like, did his performance work for you? It did.
His performance totally worked for me. I thought he was very, very funny, and I think that character needed to be funny because he is kind of such a monster of a person when you really think about it.
Yeah.
That his like nerdy, shy, I don't want to say charm, but his delivery I thought was really good. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't think he was doing a very good job when I was first watching the movie. I'll admit that. In the theater, I was kind of anti his performance, and I was kind of like, did you just cast Mark Rylance because you promised to cast Mark Rylance in like almost all your movies from here on out?
Well, no, the Steven Spielberg tried to get Gene Wilder for that role.
Oh yeah, I heard that. But
Yeah.
I think Gene Wilder was like pretty late in life at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, he declined. It wasn't because he died. Gene Wilder said no, thank you, but no thank you.
Well, that's good. I mean, like, because he did die, somewhat short after. So I'm glad.
Yeah, I think during development he passed away.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, in retrospect, I can kind of see that what Rylance is doing is kind of a more like someone who probably has some kind of like Asperger's or something like that, who like really does genuinely have trouble socializing and is more awkward. So I think what I initially took as this is just Rylance who doesn't know how to play a dork. I can now kind of see in retrospect that, he's playing it awkward on purpose, and he's playing that, that's a choice. And so I do think the performance is more interesting in those respects. But I do, the whole premise of the movie is based on this character's like love for 80s stuff, So, when he was a kid, he was locked in his room and he loved all this 80s, pop culture. And I think that's the premise of the movie, is that like this world has been built and designed because of his love for this stuff. I guess I just wish that there had been a character who could acknowledge that. Like, all the characters in this movie seem to like really love 80s culture too. And I wish there was just one character who would have been like, man, like I really hate all this shit, but I have to learn it so that I can win this game. Like I wish there was just a little bit more of like a self-referential thing, or at least a little bit more like antagonism towards that character.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like what I was saying about the ending of the movie, where they try to cheat the ending to have more of a message about the problematic nature of extreme fandom. I think that would have been a great addition. That really would have shed some light and like opened the conversation a little bit more. I do think Mark Rylance, who plays Halliday, the creator, I think his performance is really good because it puts a real layer of tragedy and empathy towards his character. Like, he's not just some guy who, it's not that he just loved 80s culture. I feel like I really get the sense that he had nothing else,
Yeah.
Like, that was his only means of happiness, was that.
But the whole movie is the key to understanding him, that he was in love. I'm genuinely confused about this. Is it that he was in love with Simon Pegg's wife, or like the woman he loved, Simon Pegg then and like didn't know that and ended up marrying her? What was it? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, in the movie, I think it's that he went on one date with this woman, never followed up on it, and Ogden, Simon Pegg's character, ends up marrying her, and he just regrets not pursuing her, I guess.
Okay. I wish they explained that a little bit more, but
I also got the impression that he's probably a guy who like never really went on a date before, so it's that first time infatuation, so it's not true love or anything like that. I think it's more infatuation and obsession, which kind of ties into the themes of the movie, obviously.
yeah.
There's a lot wrong with it, but again, I agree with Spielberg, even though to say it's a movie, not a film, is kind of a dickhead comment. He is also at the same time kind of right. Like, it's not really, whatever opportunity they had to really tackle some issues seriously, they just kind of punt on. And I think it really is meant to ultimately be enjoyed as just like a nerdy experience. The Shining thing, again, not something that was in the book. So when that popped up, I was thrilled. Like I feel like that was made for me. I was so happy watching that in the theater. And so there's a lot of stuff like that I think people can get enjoyment out of. But yeah, it's not like a great film or anything.
Yeah. So, that's basically where I stand on the movie. I do think it is fun, and it's well built. There's well-paced action scenes. They're well shot. Like Spielberg can do that stuff in his sleep. So, I don't want to like say that this was a deeply unpleasant experience, and it did, if anything, I have frustration about it because it feels like it's such a rich world that like could have done a lot with, and my frustration is just that I wish he had taken a few more steps, like, and not settled as much for just being a fun adventure movie. So like, but that doesn't mean that it's not to take away from the fun adventure movie that kind of is still in here. Like, I think if I were, a 12-year-old boy, I would have probably, really loved this movie. So, I wouldn't like tell other people to not go see it because I think general audiences would probably really enjoy it as well.
I also think most people, us included, would not be analyzing it this much if it wasn't Steven Spielberg directing.
That's true. Like, I was thinking,
he's just such a major filmmaker that anything that he comes out with, we're going to really kind of tackle and consider. And if this was like, Christopher Columbus making Ready Player One, I would have probably talked about it for 5 minutes like I did Pacific Rim 2,
Exactly. And I was thinking about that when I was watching, or when I was thinking about the movie, what you said in our conversation about how you view different films through a different prism, depending on the filmmaker, depending on the genre, what the goals of that film are. And like you said, had it been a Christopher Columbus film, I might have been like, oh, that was a slight but pretty fun adventure movie. But like when it is Steven Spielberg, that's when I kind of like, get to that place of like, oh, I expect more out of you. Like, if you're going to tackle this thing that deals so much with your own legacy and deals so much with pop culture generally, like, I want you to like really bite into it and kind of be the Steven Spielberg that made AI or Minority Report or whatever, like tackling this movie, not, the one that made, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or whatever it is.
Yeah. Ultimately, this movie gave huge props to King Kong, The Shining, and Back to the Future and Robert Zemeckis. So I will never hate you, Ready Player One.
Yeah, I don't hate this movie. I feel like I'm frustrated by it because I think there's so much potential here for it to be a fucking awesome movie. But, for what it is, like, it is pretty enjoyable. There are plenty of things that I like about it. I wouldn't have a problem, like, if it was on TV, I would watch it again. Some other quick things that I did like. I really, I'm not the world's biggest T.J. Miller fan, but I actually thought the design of his character was pretty cool.
Yeah, he was, he had a couple moments of like...
I don't know about him as kid. I just like the look of his character. That's really all I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like his character was okay. I wish they had like pushed his douchebaggery a bit more, I feel like he should have been a bit more hateful.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a good time, and it's probably in the middle pack somewhere for me with Spielberg rankings. But we're gonna get like 5 more Spielbergs in the next like 2 years. So this is just a blip on the filmography that we'll move on from.
Spielberg, you are still the king of the blockbuster. Don't worry. You made Jaws and Jurassic Park. You're good forever.
I have doubts about myself in both worlds.
Thinking that you can't pull it off?
Yeah. Every movie I make, and every movie I start, I don't think I can pull it off.
When you go onto a set in the morning for a movie, you nervous?
Yeah, every morning. Yeah. It's the same feeling I get going to work every morning as the feeling I got going to school every day. Being a bit of an outsider and not being normal and not quite getting good grades and not being able to compete, and my tummy is spilkus, my mom would call it. I'd have before school every day, and I feel that when I make movies too.
But you're better at this than you were in school.
Oh, damn straight.
The fact that he's in his 70s and can direct Ready Player One and The Post in the same year, is really speaks to just how talented he is. Like, even though I think you and I are both kind of like lukewarm on both movies, I would say that generally that's still, he can still direct the fuck out of a movie, and like his technical skills are unmatched.
Not only that, he made them in the same year. He made The Post while he was just waiting for the visual effects team on Ready Player One.
Yeah,
so
he was
like,
just bored.
This is going to take a long time. This is like 1,500 effects shots. I'll just go make a prestige drama with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep that gets nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Why not?
Yeah, like I feel like it's one of those. He's such an underrated filmmaker at this point, which is strange because he's the biggest filmmaker of all time. But he makes these movies that I think are his style is kind of so simple and elegant and old school in a way that, you know, if you watch classic Hollywood, is much more prevalent back then in terms of the way he shoots things or frames things. He's just an old school filmmaker that makes compulsively watchable things, even if the scripts don't 100% work every time. Like, the movies themselves are almost always going to be an easy watch because he's such a talented director and such a skilled craftsman.
Yeah, I wonder about that in terms of the younger generation of film fans, like kids who are in high school and contemplating going to college for filmmaking or film history or whatever. So Spielberg, obviously, his heyday is, you know, a 20-year period, probably from like 75 to 93, I guess. But then he also had, you know, Saving Private Ryan and Minority Report later and stuff. Like, he's done a lot of great movies, but we came of age, like, we were the perfect age to go see Jurassic Park in theaters, you know, as young kids.
I was 7, so.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if you're 15 now, right? That means when you were 7 years old, you went and saw War Horse. I mean, you also saw The Adventures of Tintin, which I think is a great movie. I love Tintin. But
I saw that
I don't
on
know.
Shrooms less than a few years ago, and it was great.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's one of his best adventure films ever. I think it's really, really underrated.
I'm not that high on it, but I think there's some very positive aspects to it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hope he still has the love of the kids and the younger generation, because he has made multiple A+ movies in his career.
Well, his name's as a producer on a lot of stuff, and I think people are still familiar with his name and, you know, stuff he's done. The Jurassic Park name, I think, lives on. That movie's on TV constantly. I think that there are parents who are showing kids something like that. I think Jaws and Indiana Jones are still very much a part of the pop culture lexicon. Even if kids haven't seen all 4 Indiana Jones movies, I feel like they still know who that is. So,
well, you have a preteen daughter. What has she seen?
Oh, I mean, but, you know, I'm her father. She's seen all of it.
Fair enough. What is she like? Well, like, what are some of her favorites?
I don't take that
Spielberg
into account. So,
you don't care what she says? You're just like, just sit here and watch it and then leave me alone?
Basically, yeah. No,
Okay.
you know, what was surprising to me about, like, the Indiana Jones and the Star Wars movies was they had been spoiled for her almost completely by the Lego video games. Because the Lego video games, like, are basically plot point recreations of the movies, like the adventures that you go on. So, like, we'd be watching Empire Strikes Back, and she's like, "Oh, I know that this isn't a meteor, like that it's a big monster's mouth." I was like, "Oh, well, fuck." So, like, all these, like, major things from these movies, like Luke, I'm Your Father, all that stuff had made its way so much into the pop culture lexicon that I feel like none of it was surprising for her in a way. And she seemed a little kind of like she expected a lot of it to happen. She's like, "Oh yeah, I know that this happens." And
well, the line actually isn't Luke, I'm your father. It's no, I'm your father. That's a common misconception, but whatever, no big deal. Ready Player One forever.
Okay. And so, you know what I'm talking about. But there was that.
I'm so sorry. Not just to you, but to everybody.
Well,
I'm sorry for everything.
Fuck everybody else. But, you know, I think she really responded to Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I think everybody does. My main memory of showing her Raiders of the Lost Ark was that she was maybe 8 or 9. She was pretty young, and I realized that she didn't understand what a Nazi was. So I was like, "Oh yeah, the Nazis are the bad guys in this." And she's like, "I don't know what a Nazi is." And I was like, "You know, like, they're like Hitler's henchmen." She's like, "I don't know who Hitler was." And suddenly you find yourself in this situation where you want to watch Indiana Jones, but you have to, like, explain Hitler all of a sudden. And so that was my main memory, was sitting there talking to her and be like, "Well, there was this guy with a mustache," you know, and kind of diving into that.
That's how you introduce him.
Yeah, you know, that's who he is to me. There was this guy, he wanted to be a painter, he had a mustache, you know, he got a few people together.
There was this frustrated artist with a haunted mustache that led him to massacre millions of people.
Yeah, so I did a really quick summation, you know, like that, and then we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think she had a great time.
Cool.
But, you know, Jaws 100% worked. And I will also say Jurassic Park, I screened that in a theater for her and my sisters, like in the summer before Jurassic World came out. And so they were well prepped for it. And we saw Jurassic Park, and I loved showing that in the theater to them because I knew when all the big jumps were coming, and just kind of like watching them watch it and seeing how much some of those massive jumps still worked. Like there was that push in on Laura Dern when they just get the power back on, and she's like, "We're back in business," and then then the raptor head comes like, banging out from behind her. I looked over, like all three of them just like exploded out of their chairs, and like popcorn was in the air. I was like, yes, this movie still works like fucking gangbusters. And it did. They ate it up. It's such a great movie.
That movie's flawless. I've seen it a couple times in theaters when it gets re-released, and it's perfect. It's a perfect movie.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. So that one's definitely a top 5 Spielberg for me. One movie that I've with this coming out, there's been a lot of Spielberg retrospectives, and I've seen a lot of, I would say, a lack of love for Schindler's List, which has kind of made me kind of reappreciate Schindler's List in this way of, like, the reason it doesn't make people's top 5s is because no one ever wants to watch it again. Like, everyone's just like, well, I never want to see that ever again. And in a way,
exactly. That's 100% the reason.
Yeah, and I think that in a way that speaks to the power, like, that someone like Steven Spielberg can make such great popcorn stuff like a Jaws or a Raiders, and give us stuff like that. But he also is responsible for something like the opening of Saving Private Ryan, which everyone I think would put in the top 1 or 2 most important or best war sequences of all time. And then he also gives Schindler's List, a movie that's so dark that it's so hard to watch more than once. Like that, once you take it in, it's so heavy and like and it shows you so kind of how brutal it was. That, like, I think it's such a great thing that there is this filmmaker who can do the popcorn but still also make a film that's as powerful as Schindler's List, that's so powerful that people don't even rank it highly because they're so, like, scared of it.
I mean, we talk about Ready Player One and The Post being released months apart. He put out Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year.
Insane.
That's, like, the craziest thing any filmmaker has ever done. That's absurd.
And I know, like, they're not, obviously that's like the kind of peak, but he also did Catch Me If You Can and Minority Report in the same year, which are, I think, 2 great films as well.
I agree. I'm not as high on Minority Report as most people, but I understand its love. And he also, 2005, this is one where people probably don't agree with me, but he came out with Munich, which I think is really solid, and War of the Worlds, which I think is one of his most underrated blockbusters.
I think both films have third act problems.
Yeah.
Both very good films. Very solid.
War of the Worlds I could put on every year easily and watch it.
I need to rewatch that one. I think Munich has kind of aged poorly, but I'd like to rewatch it. In my head, it's aged poorly.
Let's do an episode, War of the Worlds. We can do it like our own commentary on it or something.
Yeah, we can do like a top 5 underrated Spielbergs or underseen Spielbergs. I don't know. We can do something.
Yeah, War of the Worlds would be number 1. Spoiler.
Yeah, like I don't want to do the top 5 Spielberg because like then we'll just be talking about Jaws and Raiders and all that stuff that everybody always talks about. Like, so let's talk about some like hidden gems from Spielberg's filmography that there doesn't get enough love. Maybe on a future episode.
Yeah, to be continued.
Yeah, finally get that AI talk in that everybody out there is craving.
Hell yeah! Oh, they should if they're not. You don't realize it, but you need it.
All right. So like that, I'm good. If you're good on Ready Player One, is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, man. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. All right. Did you have any rants to end this week, or any recommendations? Anything you wanted to wrap the show up with this week?
Yeah, I have a little closing segment. This one's positive. As you know, I'm a giant basketball fan. I love the NBA. There was, in my opinion, the greatest story of the NBA season happened just last night. The second to last night of the season. This guy, his name's Andre Ingram. He is our age. He was born in November of 85. He was called up to play for the Lakers last night. It was his professional debut as a rookie. He had been in the D League of the NBA, which is basically like their pro minor league team, and he'd been overseas for a couple years since 2007. Never quit, never stopped trying to make it. He said his dream the whole time was that he thought he would make the NBA, and it was frustrating, and at a couple points he wanted to quit, but he kept persevering. Made his debut last night and just dominated. He put up 19 points on 6 of 8 shooting, hit 4 threes at the Staples Center with Magic Johnson watching, and he was getting MVP chants from the crowd. His wife was there. She was crying on TV. It was the greatest thing I've seen in a very long time. It was actually also just happened to be a nationally televised game on TNT. So afterwards, they have the Inside the NBA show with Charles Barkley and Shaq and Ernie Johnson and Kenny Smith, and they interviewed him post-game. He was like, he got the game ball from the coach, Luke Walton. It was just the coolest story. It honestly made me emotional. It speaks to perseverance that people have. I mean, there are countless guys who were probably in that league throughout all the years he was there and left and came back, who just quit because they realized, I can't do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, But he never did. And he got his moment, and he brought it. He was ready. It was just incredible to watch, man. I was just binging all of this last night and this morning and just getting goosebumps just watching everything. It was one of the coolest things I've seen in basketball.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. Props to you, Andre Ingram.
That's really cool. Especially because you got some bad basketball news this week.
Yeah, well, Kyrie Irving's out for the year. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Celtics have had a great year. Their two best players, Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, played a combined 60 games out of a possible 160. And they're still the number 2 seed in the East. It sucks, man, but they got some young kids. They got a bright future still. And the playoffs start this weekend. I will definitely be watching at least for a little bit before I leave LA for a few weeks. But yeah, go Celtics and Andre Ingram, you kick ass. Congratulations, bro.
That's cool. My little rant was we actually covered it. It kind of came up naturally at the beginning of the show. I was going to talk about my love of The Simpsons and kind of rediscovering the early seasons of The Simpsons and just how much smarter that show is and how much better it is than anything animated on. Well, I don't want to say anything animated currently. There's things. I know that there's some smart animated stuff out there that I'm not watching, and there's some really
Rick and Morty.
Well, I'm watching Rick and Morty. I was gonna say Rick and Morty's pretty great and all that, but in terms of, it's better than a lot of scripted adult dramas, or richer or funnier than most 30-minute comedies that you're getting on television. It's so good. It's got genuine characters. It's funny. It's well-paced. The jokes come nonstop. It's just so brilliant. And so I was going to rant a little bit more about, The Simpsons, but I'm going to take a little bit of sidestep, and I'm going to just make a quick recommendation to this podcast I've been listening to. It's called Slow Burn. It's from Slate. And basically it is a political podcast that is going through these very small kind of forgotten stories of Watergate, because basically it's all about how Watergate was not this month-long story that, had just happened all of a sudden. It was spread out over years, and it wasn't just one story. It was, if you were following the thing, it took a long time to get, everything out there, everyone prosecuted for it to actually be a complete thing. So it's a nice reminder in, years like now where we're, seeing the current president being investigated. It's a nice reminder that this does take time. And basically the show tells these stories of things that were happening that are these crazy, wild stories that you can't believe that aren't big deals in history, but they just kind of got swept under the rug of time. And, but they're really interesting, really fascinating bits of true story. They're really quick, 25-minute episodes. I can't recommend that podcast enough. So that's all I wanted to throw out there. Cool.
Yeah, I feel like Mueller's investigation is actually moving
pretty fast.
A lot faster than Watergate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's where I'm at for the week. We're going to meet again. We're going to review some more movies. We're going to talk some more music. And, we've got a lot of episodes planned, so I'm excited to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. It is 7:30 on Wednesday night. I am about to meet two friends right now. Once I hang up, we're going to go see A Quiet Place. So we can discuss that soon.
I've already seen it.
Because I know Phil's already seen it.
Yeah, I've already seen it. I'm very excited to discuss. So we'll do that maybe next time we sit down.
For sure, my man.
That's the show for this week. Before we go, we wanted to please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the show. Every one of those helps us out incredibly. It helps us get the word out for the show and helps more people find us. So we really need your help to do that. If you are listening and like the show, please help that way. I want to thank
rate and subscribe. Please, please, please give us 5 stars. We really want it, please.
Yeah, only give us 5 stars. If you're going to give us a bad review, fuck off. We don't want that.
Yeah, I had a friend who said, I'm going to listen to your first episode and give you my honest feedback. And then he did. He said, I really like it. I'm giving you guys 4 stars. I said, hey, man, you're a personal friend. Fuck you. Bump it up to 5.
Yeah, come on now. Come on. Give us 5 stars. If you give us 5 stars, we will be your personal friend.
Yeah, you will be my best friend. I will be there for you.
I want to thank Zach Pitts for the theme music, our intro and outro music. That was, a big gift from him. We want to thank him. And if you want to find us on Twitter, Tom can be found at Big Fat Bond. That's all one word. And I'm at Phil Wiedenheft. You can find the spelling in the show description, in the show notes. So look for us there. Tweet at us. Send us, pictures, info, whatever you want to do. Seek us out. Find us. Reach out. Reach out and touch faith.
Touch us. Love us. We will love you back. This is all for you. We just want to be loved.
All right, cool. All right, well, Tom, you go enjoy that movie. We'll talk later.
Thanks, buddy. Love you, everybody. Bye.